This is HistoryNet and Mr. Brass interviewing JMD the Apologist. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good.
So tell us about yourself and what you do.
I'm a young apologist. I run the website Christian Truth Through Apologetics. I basically believe that apologetics is a form of evangelism, and that Christians should have this form of evangelism down in their back pocket for when the time is right, whether dealing with their own doubts or dealing with skeptics that can cause doubts, or helping solve doubts for those that would put a stone in their shoes for those who can come to the faith. And I also run the YouTube channel JMDApologeics 101, which is basically the video ministry part of Christian Truth Through Apologetics. And that's basically what I do.
What got you into apologetics at such a young age?
I came across,
Cult of Dusty.
Yeah, Cult of Dusty. You know my testimony better than I do. Cult of Dusty, TJ Kurt, Jack and Glenn. I was sort of a young Christian in freshman year, just coming across these people. Never was equipped, no matter what church or youth group I went to. Actually, the youth group at my high school, the youth group leader there, even though he's a young earth creationist, he helped get me into apologetics, which was very helpful. And for a while, I would defend young earth creationism, but that would have caused doubts as well. So I came across more advanced apologetics like William Lane Craig and stuff. So that got me into apologetics, and I felt Christians need to have this better, and especially the next generation. And my goal is to help influence younger teens to get into apologetics, especially younger Christians, obviously.
Yeah. I know, the first question I have, when did you first realize you were petty?
When I took a logic class, because, atheists just hate logic, especially when one says you're a theist, you have nothing to do with logic. It's just like, oh, what is logic? And they don't know how to answer a simple question. So that's when I realized I was petty, by asking simple questions.
Well, just remember, with apologetics, anything you say, you're a sophist.
I'm a what? With
a sophist. Into sophistry?
Are you talking about the sophist, philosophically speaking, or sophistry as in word salad?
It's like a like a word salad.
Oh, okay. So the excuse when someone doesn't understand what you're saying about you. Yeah, that's what apologetics is just about, is manipulating people and just trying to make a quick buck.
Well, I always say this: if you really want to manipulate people, you're in the wrong field. You should be into politics.
That would be a good argument from a counter example, where those who make the claims that apologetics is just to manipulate people and so on, as Aaron Raw would probably argue.
All right. So, another question I got is, what is your favorite Christian thinker of all time?
I don't really have a one-time favorite, because everyone contributes great thoughts to every issue that there is. I would say, William Lane Craig was number one on my top 10 apologists list. I like his stuff. I really enjoy reading his books and articles on reasonable faith. He would be one of the first I would suggest for more philosophical stuff, but Frank Turk just gets the message out quickly, so we need people like him to speak common sense wise, so you don't get accused of word salads, you could say. But when it comes to, I like Thomas Aquinas' stuff. I'm actually mirroring that on my channel right now, a conversation I had with S.J. Thomason on divine simplicity and his 5 ways. J.P. Moreland has some interesting stuff with substance dualism, defending the soul and so on. When it comes to New Testament reliability, Daniel B. Wallace, Craig Blomberg. Trying to think of some others on top of my head.
Well, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There's some of my favorites come down to St. Augustine. Ignatius of Antioch.
City of God.
I got plenty of favorites in there. Like, if we were going modern day, I would probably say Alvin Plantinga is probably the best in terms of Christian apologetics. Or, Christian philosophy in general.
Yeah, I want
C.S. Lewis for me.
I think he's good in terms of, like, literature kind of thing.
Yeah.
He knows a way of conveying it. Although he's not really much, I wouldn't say he's much of an apologist per se, but he knows how to convey an argument in a more fanciful way.
Yeah, I would agree with your synopsis of C.S. Lewis.
Like, were you raised a Christian or converted at some point in your life?
Raised Christian, identified as Christian. I don't really think I was a Christian. And then freshman year, I started taking my Christian faith more seriously, and that's what I would probably consider myself when I became a Christian. But when I came convinced that was true, that's when you truly become a Christian. Realizing the realism of Christianity.
Well, you just have to remember, you're only a Christian because you were born in the United States.
Really?
True, yeah. But the skeptic who says that they were born in the United States, but they special plead with that.
Well, yeah, I know. I always found that funny. I said, they'll tell me that, and they'll say, well, I mean, it's funny when they tell me that. They'll say, well, you're only a Christian because you were born in the United States. I said, I'm not a Christian. So it's always fun that they have those presumptions when they're whoever they're talking to.
Yeah, because, learning who you talk to isn't important before you actually talk to them.
Well, that's why we have phones for, so we don't actually have to see each other.
If you were born in Soviet Russia and China, you'd be an atheist.
And a communist.
Yep.
True.
Doesn't mean those positions are wrong just because of the geographical location. So instead
of course it does. Why do you think they bring it up?
Well, I mean, the thing about the genetic fallacy is the genetic fallacy is invalid, like, because if it uses a deductive approach. If you're arguing inductively and you're not really arguing, like, for the invalidity of the position, but more or less how someone came to it, then you have more of a grounding.
Yeah, the problem would be if you try and discredit the metaphysical position of Christianity, God's existence, by just pointing out, well, you only believe because you're raised Christian or whatnot. That's, as you said, that's not deductive reasoning, and that's why it's a fallacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're merely arguing, like, saying, if their argument is like, you should be, you should have more doubts yourself because, your environment influenced you, that's maybe a valid concern. But, like, if they're using it to just dismiss your position, then that doesn't follow.
Yeah, it doesn't.
What is something that you think Christian apologists could do better with?
I think they have good responses to many of the objections, but I think there are new objections coming up, and I think they need to update the script a little, especially I think Frank Turk's lectures and stuff are good, but he literally goes with the same thing every time, and I think he should throw in more objections to deal with. I think we need to practice more gentleness and respect, and I think personally that the debate format that is used, defeat your opponent, is not the way of putting shoes in people's stones. No, putting a stone in someone's shoe. I think we should take sort of the more academic Aristotle approach, where two people with two differing opinions have a good discussion as a friendship, you could say, in that position. So I think the approach a little bit could be brought a little bit better. Like the old gentleness and respect for it.
Just remember, Aristotle was a moron because he was a geocentrist and he believed that women were just defective men.
And everything he said regarding physics is wrong. Therefore, he's wrong on the God question. Checkmate.
True. The first mover argument or anything in his ethics is completely wrong.
Oh yeah, it's always funny like that. It's like, I don't know, it's just stupid when they do that because like they use chronological fallacies, like the chronological snobbery fallacy, and they really, and like when you bring that up, they generally just don't even care. They just want to keep adding more onto it.
Yeah.
So what are your viewpoints about like abortion and stuff?
I'm pro-life.
You're pro-life? Okay.
Same.
Looks like my lady showed up. Introduce yourself.
Oh yeah. My name is Mick Barbie. I'm not gonna tell you my real name, but
Your volume's low.
you said what?
Your volume's low.
Oh, my volume low. Is it better now? Better?
Nope.
It's not.
Now it is. Yeah.
Okay, great. I have my microphone in. Thank you. But yeah, I have different viewpoints than all of you, so this should be a good conversation.
Always welcome different conversations.
Yeah, good. That's what I like.
Who would you say your favorite apologists are and why?
Sort of like the, who are your favorite Christian thinkers. I would probably give the same answers, but like YouTube apologist wise, I think David Wood, Act 17 Apologetics, and Inspiring Philosophy are both great YouTube channels for apologetics.
What would you say?
I would say probably Inspiring Philosophy for me.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. What would you say is the best argument for the existence of God?
The cumulative case with all the arguments, I think most of them are valid and sound, like the Kalam cosmological argument. Brass and I have had conversations on that.
Oh, but the Kalam's been debunked 1,000 times.
True, but I'm just in it for the quick buck. I like the ontological argument. I combine that with the contingency argument, fine-tuning argument, moral argument. Hopefully I'll develop some sort of free will argument. Then you have the argument from consciousness, which I think you need both consciousness and free will to sort of use the moral argument, it would seem like, because I think morality presupposes those two things. So there's more arguments, but I would say those are good enough for the average Christian apologist to use.
What's usually your response to the straw man of said arguments?
Sorry, what was that?
What's usually your response to straw mans of said arguments?
Did you by chance see the video I did with Matt Dillahunty on what was the origin of the Kalam cosmological argument?
No, not yet.
Well, he basically claimed that the Kalam was developed to avoid the special pleading because, the original cosmological argument was if everything has a cause and everything has a cause, therefore God causes it, even though there's no theologian who thinks that way, especially I point to Thomas Aquinas.
And Aristotle.
Yeah, because, they definitely didn't think, oh, geez, if I say everything needs a cause, and it would seem like God would need a cause. And he basically accused the apologist of forging this argument to avoid the circular reasoning he has to have. The circular reasoning he has to have on that of, I say, everything needs a cause, therefore what caused God. So I'll just, say that Christians, developed the Kalam cosmological argument to avoid that. And of course, Braxton Hunter literally asked him, what's your source for that? He didn't have a source. He said, well, that's the way I was taught. And I basically made a response video to that with how I deal with straw man arguments. I just point out, hey, this is what they're straw manning. Then I try and steel man their position, and by giving better objections to the argument they straw manned, and saying, by responding with a steel man and giving a better objection and dealing with it, I guess.
I remember the most funniest objection I ever gotten to the Kalam was that someone, I think it was Matt Dillahunty, who he accused the Kalam argument of being begging the question.
Yeah, a
I'm
lot
like,
of them do with oh god.
yeah, I'm like, you do realize what a deductive argument is, right? It's like it's literally supposed to look like it's begging the question.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like pointing. It'd be like if I pointed out like a science paper and I said, "Well, this science paper is invalid because it makes the assumption that the past is a reliable guide to future events." It's like you just described the inductive method.
Well, it says, some people say, my logic teacher told me this, all reasoning is circular. You have to start with basic axioms, which is sort of deductive reasoning. I think the laws of logic themselves prove themselves, and any argument against them shows them to be true because you presuppose them, so they're indubitable, meaning you have absolute certainty of them, and they're metaphysical necessities. But other than that, there are certain axioms you have to start with, like science, you have to assume uniformity of nature, and that the past is will be the same, or the future will be like the past, and so on, as you were talking about.
Well, yeah, and that you have to rely. You have to have the presumption that your mind is a reliable guide to predicting these things.
That as well.
Yeah, or you have consequences for it.
What was that?
You have consequences for it. You know, like you might
We
be
can't hear you.
good. Okay, can you hear me now?
Nope.
Not at all.
I can hear you.
A little bit.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. I said there's consequences. Like you may think it's good, but there's consequences for each and every action. You know, that's what I think. Good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what are your viewpoints? Like, are you into Old Testament or the New Testament more? Just curious.
Why? I'll just ask a question in return. Why would the Old Testament or the New Testament be of more importance than the other?
Well, because it's like in chronological order. You know, like the New Testament is when Jesus came and he fulfilled the law for us, you know. Then the Old Testament was if they didn't fulfill it, their sins couldn't be forgiven. It was just covered up every year with animal sacrifice, you know. So just curious on what your viewpoint is.
Well, I guess we could say the Old Testament is more descriptive when it comes to the events you described there. I think they're both of equal importance of showing how humanity is fallen and needs a savior. Obviously, the Old Testament shows why we need the savior, and then the New Testament shows how you get the new savior and who the new savior is. And I think without either one, then you don't really have a gospel message. So I think they're both equally important.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, it's just how you view it. Like,
I
just how
mean,
you view it.
JMD knows me already. He knows I'm more of an Old Testament guy myself.
Really? Oh, okay, Mr. Bass. I'm more of a New Testament.
The Old Testament more or less provides the cultural background of the Savior.
Yeah, because I can't follow 613 laws.
Nor does anybody who's not an ancient Israelite.
Yeah, or Jewish, you know. Yeah,
I mean, Brass has fulfilled all 613 laws. So
Yeah, without even trying.
Eat pork. That's the law.
No,
I mean,
gotta have
what's funny? Like, here's the thing: the whole point of the Old Testament really is, like, the Old Testament, like the Torah, we can call it. It was like the laws and everything were made because no one can actually fulfill them all. That was to show the grace of God. Like, legitimately nothing.
Like the Jewish people thought they didn't need God, and he was like he got mad, and then they made 613 laws. You know, they thought they didn't need him, but the whole time he was, you know, blessing them through the whole way. You know, and um, do you guys remember what happened at the beginning with Adam and Eve?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that really, you know, changed a lot.
Which leads to another question. How do you see the story of Adam and Eva as archetypes or actual like people, even if they were like Paleolithic cavemen or something like that?
I don't know. To me, it's just speculation.
Speculation or what?
Just like going into the specifics of who Adam and Eve were. I think they're fully human. Probably. I don't know if they're cavemen or whatnot. I think IP's Garden of Eden video is very helpful, but I'll be interested to see his Genesis video on
Yeah, I don't think they was
Adam and
cavemen,
Eve.
you know. I think they was very, I just think they were just like normal humans, you know.
You know, we use cavemen to refer to people in the Stone Age, but yeah.
Okay. So how do you think the world would be if Adam didn't eat of the tree of knowledge?
No idea.
Oh, come on, you guys.
Overpopulation would be a mess.
Wouldn't we all be like glorious? We'd be all naked.
No, I don't. No, I think I don't think that's a result of sin. I just think that was a way of showing their shame. I think that we would probably have been advancing and using the materials God gave us to create things that we see now, just not in a sinful world.
Yeah.
How do you feel that many atheist channels have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers and several have received a subscriber boom as of late? What do you think's going on?
I think it shows that people's research skills are low, and that they subscribe to these channels as their main sources on religion and Christianity and so on.
Yeah. And like I think they also like how we're getting the atheists are getting like more black people is when they say about slavery. That would get a lot of black people, you know, atheists and stuff.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
you always got to ask them what excuse atheist slave owners have. Since the white man used the white slave owners that happen to be Christians used the Bible to justify it. But what
Yeah.
excuse did atheist slave owners have?
I don't know.
I don't think they would have any.
Precisely.
Oh, well, I mean, the economy, of course.
Well, there was one excuse that it was considered a science of the day called a fair analogy, like the Africans had dimples in the brain or something like that, and that affected. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I am.
Anyway, they referenced it in Django, the new one.
Oh, Unchained or whatever it's called.
Still can't hear you.
I said the Django Unchained with Jimmy
Yeah.
Fox. That movie
Yeah,
where he was whipping the people.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, what do you say is the best / worst debater on like of atheists have on YouTube?
Mr. Atheist, whenever he does debates, he's very hard to listen to. Cosmic Skeptic, he has more to say. I've watched one of his full debates, then I got through like half of one. Sometimes he'll make a decent point, and then he almost sounds like meme level atheist. I'm trying to think of some more. I think Steve McRae is very philosophical, but he's also not an atheist because he understands the philosophy of atheism and agnosticism. And I love whenever he makes atheists get upset with him about his definition of agnosticism and atheism. So I like listening to some of his stuff, but when he critiques the Bible, it's just like how atheists do it. Trying to think of some more on top of my head. You got Tom Jump. I'll give him credit where credit is due. He doesn't use meme arguments, and he actually tries to use the philosophy and tries to use sources, which I respect. I just don't think his arguments are that good.
And there's also Raging Atheists. You've seen him?
Oh, he's a moron. Like I get the whole gentleness and respect part. I know I said earlier that apologists should practice that, but I can understand why some apologists, if they even know who he is, could get upset with him because he doesn't understand half the stuff. Like Darth Dawkins was on his channel once. He's a presuppositionalist that trolls atheists. I sort of enjoy it, but he basically was trying to explain literally basic laws of logic, like the law of excluded middle, which is in a true dichotomy, it's either one or the other. And Darth Dawkins tried explaining this to him, and literally Raging Atheist, no theistic implications yet, and Raging Atheist literally said, you can shove your law of excluded middle up your butthole, basically. And it's just like, yeah, because, I'm going to take someone serious like that, right? And his debate with Matt Powell was really hard to listen to, but to be fair, Matt Powell was also hard to listen to as well.
Yeah, and then there's kind of like that one with Hovind and Destiny. That one was hilarious.
I didn't see that one yet.
Well, I mean, just remember this. According to evolution, a rock can give birth to an elephant.
Well, yeah, of course, and a bowling ball is related to a whale, I think it is.
No, elephant can't give birth to a pine tree.
It's actually a very good impression.
That was cute.
No, that's Hovind. That's kind of Hovind. Dr. Dino.
Say it again.
His name is Dr. Dino.
Nice.
I don't think it's as good as Digital Hammurabi's impression.
Trying to do a Jordan Peterson impression like that could do better.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Do it again.
Talk about the essence of consciousness. Yeah. Anyway.
I can really only do like two. I can do two voices. I can do Yoda, and I can do Scooby Doo. That's
Try
pretty
it.
much
I wanna
it.
hear it. Go ahead.
May the force be with you, Reggie. Reggie.
Oh my gosh. Yo, that was awesome.
I can also do Solid Snake.
Go ahead, do it. Good,
Solid.
Engine.
I can do Snake, Big Boss.
Yeah,
Metal Gear.
do Scooby, Engine.
Rapping. No, I'm not even gonna try that.
Why? That's nice. Good. I'm rooting for you. Good.
How do you see the future of apologetics?
What was that one?
That was horrible.
Oh, try it again. Try it again.
No.
Come on. Just try it one more time. Don't get all bashful.
I asked a question.
Yeah, future of apologetics.
Okay.
I think that we're going to end up having more YouTube apologists and so on. And I see more platforms on the internet going up in apologetics. I see it, at least. I don't know if it is going to happen. That's my opinion what's going to happen.
Oh, I mean, you can always do what I do for a living and basically troll Atheist Republic on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's literally the entire thing I do when I'm on Twitter. Like, I go on, I have it like bookmarked to go on there, and then I just go to the recent post, and I make like 5 responses to every stupid thing that they say. I have constant work.
Oh wow. We should give donations to you. That's a job right there.
Well, yeah, I told Engine that I probably one day I'm just going to collect all this stuff, like all my responses to them. I'm just going to compile it into one big book.
Yeah, there you go. And then you can do
Just sell it.
cryptocurrency or Bitcoin.
When are you getting started?
I would have to go all the way back to even my Facebook because that's when I started it,
Nice. Go ahead.
which was
You
like
can do
2
it.
years ago, I think.
I'll donate $1 for each page, and I'll let everybody match up with me.
All right. I was going to also say about with JMD. I believe, how well versed are you in the early church fathers?
I've read Saint Augustine. For my martyrdom paper, I've read some like out Clement of Alexandria and Polycarp and so on. I'm not as well adverse as I should be, but I definitely want to. I think I have to take a church history class at my at my college, so that will probably be when I become fairly adverse.
Well, I mean, clearly it's not as good as me.
Yeah, clearly.
I actually remembered it was sort of funny, like when I went on Modern Day Hysteria, and I was actually able to have a pretty good conversation, like right off the cuff with church history about like politics that went on like during the early church fathers and stuff. It actually was pretty. I also keep learning stuff because I read about the Middle Ages, and I've also done a series on the Crusades and stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I like learning about these sort of things.
Yeah.
Church fathers probably wouldn't recognize Protestant Christianity.
Well, I mean, I've always found it funny because despite how atheists are always saying how much they hate Christianity, their history comes directly from Protestants. Protestant propaganda. Well,
Anyway,
Protestant propaganda and deist propaganda,
yeah,
like Voltaire.
growing up in those holier than thou evangelical from the South, that can really fuck you up. Now silence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about something else then. If you could preach anywhere in the world, what country would you go preach at?
The one I'm in now, because I think that's where God has me. So
Saudi Arabia.
I'm to be honest, I'll need a pretty good divine revelation to go there.
You know what really sucks though? Like Christianity reached due to the power vacuum in Central Africa, right-wing evangelical, hyper-evangelical Christianity reached there, and now the country's all kinds of fucked up because they synchronized that with the African tribal religions.
What is African tribal religion?
Like you've seen that documentary, God Loves Uganda.
Ooh, God loves Uganda.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Any of you?
I
Brass.
don't think I've seen it. But I would go, if I could go any country, I would probably go to, let's see. For me, I would try to go to China.
Don't.
Why?
It's illegal to be a Christian over there.
Yeah, some I know. They're arresting them and persecuting them now. Okay.
Oh, looks like Brass left.
Yeah.
Oh, why do you leave?
I was hungry.
Oh, I guess his internet's off.
Oh, his internet's off? Okay, well, I got 2 men now, so let's see. Anybody want to ask me any questions?
You?
Yeah, me.
All right.
Okay, you make sure they're like sounding questions I can understand. Okay.
Ask.
Yeah.
Ask what's on your mind.
Hmm. What made you both be Christians in the first place? Was it because of family, because of your grandparents, family? What made you really decide to give your life up for Christ?
Oh, sorry. Is this a question for me?
Yeah,
Obviously.
Yeah,
Yes,
both.
sir. Well, I think being convinced of it being true, and I think you have good reason to believe that it is reality itself, then that should be good enough reason to become a Christian. Or as you would say, Christ follower.
Yeah.
And Brass is back.
Do you think the end of times is near, or we're already in the end of times? Like, do you think the world is coming to an end?
Maybe. I used to think I thought 2012 was the end.
Yeah.
Because when I was like really obsessed with end time stuff, I used to think Obama was the Antichrist. I used to be a Kirk Cameron person. And what I realized from my studies of Revelation is end time speculation sometimes distracts you from the gospel and so on. So ultimately, we don't know when the time
Yeah.
Christ will come is, but
The world's supposed to end before you were born, 1999.
true.
Yeah.
So we're all not even having this conversation because we're all dead right now. So
Well, I mean, you have to remember, according to B theory of time, where technically it's like all like 1999 and stuff is just I mean, it's still real today, but it just comes before then in the spatio-temporal context.
Well, it pretty much did.
true.
Pretty much did in a way. Culture just declined after that.
You think so? And
Now
why?
we're living in clown world.
Cloud world.
Yeah, that's the new descriptive for the state of affairs of the modern day.
Well, like social media and famous people.
All that. But
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just have to remember we have such a good Christian president in there.
oh yeah, God's champion.
We're gonna make America great again.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, apparently him and Engine have a lot in common since apparently they're both very much racist.
You think so? I don't think he's racist. Well, not
Yeah.
Asian.
yeah, I'm so racist. I have a Black Rican Greek Persian girlfriend.
I don't think he's racist. He's not racist. That's a fact.
No,
No.
we're just fucking around based on that SJW rumor. I mean,
Yeah, he's not racist, guys.
I like SJW. I
Black
think has a
dog.
good heart. Oh,
You hear
sorry.
me? He loves black dogs. His favorite dog color is black. I'm just kidding.
what were you saying?
Oh, I was saying I think SJ has a good heart, but I think like some of her arguments just don't work.
I'm talking about SJWs, social justice warriors.
Well, them too. Their arguments suck. I mean,
Well,
it's actually
logically they
if
have
you-
no argument because they can't even make a conclusion on anything most of the time.
well, of course they can. It's just the conclusion is always the patriarchy.
They just got to play outrage and then dismiss you of being homophobic or sexist or racist, and the conversation's over.
And here's did you hear, guys? I know Engine heard about it, but did you hear about the whole essence of thought situation with rationality rules?
I haven't. Like I said at a podcast I was on yesterday with S.J. Manson. It's funny because there'll be like all Christians go at each other's throats with theological debates, even though most of the time that's not true. There's disagreements. Well, Rationality Rules makes a mistake in his video, and every atheist is either on one side, on Delahanty's side, or on his side, and it's sort of funny because now we have these two parties of atheism fighting with each other.
It's not the first time it happened.
Well, I mean, it's always funny because I was actually bringing it up. Is like, do you ever notice? Is like, it seems like even though Christians may disagree a lot online, it's like you never have them like split apart like into different teams because of disagreements. Really, like the only remote time I've ever seen that sort of thing happen was maybe with Matt Powell. But not even really with him so much as like because every Christian just pretty much disowned him.
Any sane person ever would disown him.
Well, just remember, he believes that, gay people should be put to death nowadays.
And then all they do is play video games and drinking Coke and
Well, I mean,
so uncultured.
I know it's just stupid with him. I believe JMD, you know about Steven Anderson, I believe.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he recently got kicked out of Ireland.
Yeah, I he's kicked out of multiple countries last time I heard.
Yeah. The only country he hasn't been kicked out, as far as I know, is Mexico. They'll pretty much take anyone there.
Oh, the Chinese will like him, putting gays to death and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, the Chinese government would absolutely love him.
Yeah, don't they say that if you're gay in China that you have a mental disability or something like that?
Well, they won't love him over there because he's he calls himself a Christian, even though he doesn't act like one. But
oh, that's a good topic. How do you act like a Christian?
By loving your enemy.
Not like relationship, but acting like. Are you supposed to always act happy or sad or just curious?
I think the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5-6, gives pretty good answers to Christian virtues, how Christians are supposed to act.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a common theme through most of them.
Okay.
Oh, it's a theme that they all believed on blind faith.
Yeah. Exactly.
I believe you got to see Inspiring Philosophy's video on that.
Yeah, I did.
I thought it was pretty good. Although I think it's been done to death.
You know what the sad thing is that Aaron
yet they keep still saying it.
The sad thing is that Aaron Raw and his buddy Steph Andrews built their career on being willfully ignorant of what faith is.
Yeah.
That's their tagline. Be against faith.
Well, I mean, here's what's funny is like they'll say this, like Seth Andrews is the same guy that says, the Bible, the Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
And I pretty much would tell him, you have yet to prove to me that you're any more smarter than a goat herder.
Yeah. Well, I would grant that he's smarter, but not wiser. His wisdom is.
Well, I mean, hell, you have to think about this. Like, I always found this funny. Atheists have the weirdest hatreds. They have hatreds for goat herders, and they have hatreds for people that study, like, mythology scholars.
Well, not all the goat herders, just the Bronze Age ones.
Well, I mean, even then, like, you do realize, like, plenty of smart people were goat herders. That's sort of what you did in ancient times. It really had no thing about your intelligence.
Like, and Aaron Raw himself would just totally dismiss any ancient wisdom there is. Like, God was imagined by a bunch of superstitious primitives that didn't know where the sun went at night.
But yeah, I just think it's just very funny. I think Inspiring Philosophy told you about like how he's going to be having a debate.
Oh yeah.
With Aaron Raw.
Oh, he's going to destroy him.
I believe, is it like a live debate, like with like they're going to meet up at a location?
Yep.
Oh, that's lovely. I was either wondering if it was going to be that or like usual, like a Google Hangout,
like WWE.
No, you can predict it will go the way of whenever Dillahunty debates anybody. Like his sycophantic followers will just proclaim victory no matter what he says. Even if he takes a crap on stage, they'll just clap and cheer.
Well, I mean, you don't want to do WWE with Aaron Raw, as he already looks like an overweight Undertaker.
He gets upset when these hateful Christians call him that.
Well, he's literally the villain from Pocahontas, which is hysterical.
Yeah, Rackley.
Oh my goodness.
He's like, and people still call me, say I look like Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun.
I say that's an insult to Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun. But yeah, it's just like, I think it is. Yeah. I believe you also got to talk about the whole case about the martyrs for Christians. Like, there's, like, I believe you guys went into apologia,
Yeah,
and how he went into how the whole martyrs for Christians, like the Christians that testified and died for their faith, how that's like sort of a mythology or something.
well, some speculate that later Christians suffering hardship just before Constantine came to power.
Well, I definitely think Peter, Paul, and James. I think most scholars would probably agree from the paper I've did. Most agree that they would have, that there's good evidence that they were accused of being Christian and so on, and there's say, well, how do you know they had the chance to recant? They had the chance to recant by not preaching the gospel and not preaching what they truly believed to have seen. If they knew it was false, and you're not going to preach something that's false.
Yeah.
So even though there is some early Roman documentation, like Pliny the Younger, where he would, in a letter to governor, I forget which Roman governor it was, but basically he ended up, I believe he ended up giving a Christian to recant. But of course, this isn't during the time of the martyrs. It's like 118 AD on the top of my head. But even then, you may make an argument that perhaps the Romans are consistent in the way they practice law, since they have the government principle, innocent before proven guilty, and that's a common law. So perhaps it would be consistent in their law, but you don't have to go that far. You can just say that the apostles that would have been the earliest eyewitnesses, there's good evidence that they did die as martyrs, and they didn't need a chance to recant because they already had the chance to recant by not preaching the gospel, which they would know is false or true.
We don't know how the other apostles died, but we know for a fact that Peter and Paul died in Rome under Nero.
Yeah, I think we have good evidence for both James's
executed in Jerusalem.
Yeah, and then Thomas. Interestingly enough, there's
in India.
Yeah, there's obviously legend built up, but a lot of sources seem to build off the same point that he was martyred in India. And interestingly enough, there's a coin. I forget the ruler. It's in Sean McDowell's book. Very interesting. I actually learned this from a lecture I attended at the Cross-Examined Instructor Academy. That an Indian coin that they found was the same ruler that Thomas would have been, died under. But there's many different stories about how Thomas would have died, which is why there's legend going around it. I just want to say real quick, just like legend theory with Christ, the fact would be that Christ died and would have died by crucifixion. Of course, they would argue there's legend developed around that, even though I don't think there is when you look at the New Testament manuscript evidence. But just like with that, there's legend developed around Thomas's death. But the point would be he died somehow in India for martyrdom, and that's what all these Gnostic texts and some texts would seem to report.
Or, maybe he just died of old age in India.
Yeah, probably.
That can always work.
Maybe, but I don't know why there'd be so much legend developed around it if it wasn't a significant event that happened. But
yeah, and there's
and I think it's Andrew also that there's interesting that there might be evidence for. I can actually check real quick what I concluded in my paper.
Then there's the persecutions throughout the first 3 centuries of Christianity. That was kind of exaggerated, but there were persecutions here and there, but not on that extreme. Like they
Well, I think the biggest persecutions was during the time of Justin Martyr. That's why he wrote his first and second apology, and Nero.
and Perpetua.
Yeah, those would have been, and then there's a few others, but it's not as like, you know, Christians being fed to lions. I think that's exaggerated, but
Well, they were fed
Yeah.
to lions under
How
Nero.
about in Japan?
well, yeah, in like the second, third centuries.
How about in Japan when they was killing them?
What?
Well,
In Japan, they was killing
Yeah,
Christians.
yeah, but that was
yeah,
that was much later. That was around the time the English landed in North America.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
so-
apparently Jesus was Chinese, didn't you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty. I mean, it's just as likely Jesus was Chinese as he was a 6 foot tall white guy.
Oh yeah, totally.
basically.
Jesus wasn't white. Jesus was black.
Middle Eastern. I think Middle Eastern. I could be wrong, but I thought it was Middle Eastern.
I was just mocking
Oh.
Chris Rock from Dogma.
Oh.
Well, I
and
think it's that time because it's getting late for me.
Oh, all right.
It was nice talking to you, JMD.
Yeah, nice talking to you guys too.
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, Christian truth needs to be spread through apologetics for those who are Christians and want to have good evangelism nowadays.
But if Christianity's so truthful, why does it need apologists?
True. I mean, that always defeats the apologist. So,
It's sort of like if science is so good, why do we need scientists? Like,
or you know, if it's easy to learn, then why do we need teachers, or you know, something stupid like that? But you know, logic.
yeah,
I'm petty
Well-
anyway, so.
well, yeah, it just works out like that. But yeah, I think this was a pretty good conversation. We got to go off some pretty good Christianity notes.
Yeah, we did a
And
great.
it was also nice to have a change of pace and have Engine's girl on here.
Yeah, it was a good laugh. I had fun with all you guys.
All right, we one question in the live chat. Not much of a crowd today.
Mhm.
Inspiring philosophy from what
That's-
I've watched. Actually, I recant Kent Hovind. That is my final choice.
That question was from Pick Up Your Pants Patrol, whatever kind of name is that. All right, this has been HistoryNet and Mr. Brass interviewing JMD the apologist. See you next time.